All right, guys, today we take a look at Taconic Distillery out of Standfordville, New York. The company's been up and operating since 2016. Everything inside this bottle is their own distillate. This is their 3-year straight bourbon whiskey. Comes in at 90 proof and has a mash bill of 70% corn, 25% rye, and 5% malted barley. Excited to get into this one, guys. Without further ado, let's go. All right, guys, as I said, this is Taconic Distillery's 3-year straight bourbon whiskey. This is their own distillate. So yes, there are other distilleries in New York that are distilling their own whiskey and not sourcing. So Taconic is doing everything on their own. Again, this one comes in at 90 proof. So let's go ahead and get into the nose. Really nice, like corn sweetness, rye spice, just straight out of the gate. First thing I get, that was a little bit further into the glass. A little bit of baking spices on there. I'm picking up like some nutmeg, a little bit of allspice in there. There is this like maple syrup aspect to it. It's like a molasses, like a little bit of like a burnt brown sugar. It's a little bit further away from the glass, picking that up. Wasn't expecting that at all. A little bit of a darker cherry note in there as well. But I think like the corn and that rye spice is really kind of like what is dominating the nose right now. But then there's like those undertones of that maple syrup, a little bit of cherry in there as well. And I do actually pick up a little bit of nuttiness in there, maybe a little bit of almond on the nose. It's definitely an undertone, not very dominant at all. Definitely a little bit of nuttiness in there further into the glass. Some sweet oak in there as well. Nice nose on this one. Actually smells older than what it really is. Let's get in the palate, guys. Cheers. Wow, I was not expecting that on the palate. Snickerdoodle cookie. Honey, a little bit of graham cracker. You do pick up like a little bit of like that corn sweetness on the tip of the tongue. Rye spices are they're there a little bit. But that's like snickerdoodle cookie graham cracker that sits kind of like across the middle of the palate. Finish is kind of short, but that's a really nice tasting note for the very first sip. Again, that like sugar cookie, a little bit of cinnamon there on the front with that corn. Middle of the palate, some rye spices. Yeah, I mean, again, short kind of finish. It does kind of fall off under the finish, but I mean, what a burst of flavor off that first sip, guys. Let's get into the second one. Yeah, this is something that's definitely an easy sipper for me. I could get myself in trouble with this. It drinks very easy. Kind of watery, actually, a little bit on the palate, on like that first and second sip. Again, rye spices. There's this snickerdoodle cookie on the front of the palate, some corn there on the front of the palate, like corn sweetness. Middle of the palate, some rye spices, like this like graham crackery crust almost. Finish. I don't really get too much. There's like a little bit of honey there on the back end. Now the rye spices don't really fall like through into the finish as well. I don't really get any of that right now. But really, like I said, the main bursts of flavor are really on the front and the middle of the palate. A little bit of honey sweetness kind of there on the back end. Let's get the last sip, guys. Cheers. Yeah, so not much has really changed there. Again, like I maybe pick up like a little bit of vanilla there on the front of the palate now with that like snickerdoodle cookie. A little bit of cinnamon there on the front of the palate, some corn sweetness, middle of the palate, graham cracker crust. Maybe a little bit of like sweet oak there kind of appeared on the back end, but like graham cracker crust across the center of the palate. Like a hint, like a very, very slight hint of maybe cherry there on the back end. With that honey, like a honey cherry type deal on the back. Sweet oak there a little bit. Yeah, so again, on those first three sips, it's very like watery when you first take a sip of it. It does coat the palate pretty well in that sense. It's not very viscous, but it kind of just like it gives you that like watery feeling in your mouth. Big bursts of flavor there on the front, middle of the palate. Back of the palate died off a little bit. You get a little bit of honey, a little bit of cherry there, but then the finish kind of slowly fades off. It's a very, very easy sipping whiskey. I could definitely go through a lot of this very quickly. But I mean, for being their own distillate at 3 years old, I'm actually very impressed with how this drinks. There's a lot of I wasn't expecting any of these tasting notes coming from this, but that snickerdoodle cookie, that cinnamon, a little bit of corn sweetness on the front of the palate, and then a graham cracker crust on the middle of the palate there with some rye spices. Didn't pick up any of the nuttiness that I did on the nose. Then on the back end, like I said, a little bit of honey and like this like slight hint of cherry. For being 3 years old, in my opinion, I mean, I would go out and buy a bottle of this for sure. I think I'm going to go through this one pretty quickly. Again, it is an easy drinker, but really nice job here from Taconic Distillery with this 3-year straight bourbon whiskey. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to send a big thank you over to the team at Taconic Distillery for supplying me with this bottle to review on the channel. Guys, do yourselves a favor. If you haven't tried anything from Taconic Distillery, if it's near your, near your home anywhere, or you see it at a liquor store, pick it up and buy it. You will not be disappointed with what you get from this bottle. I know they have several different expressions that they offer as well, a barrel strength and some different finishings. From what I understand, it is their own distillate. And again, this is out of New York, and everything is their own. Very, very impressed by what they've kind of put together here in their kind of flagship bourbon, if you will. For being 3 years, I'm shocked at the flavors that I've pulled from this bottle. I do want to see kind of where it evolves after this neck pour, just to see if anything changes. But I would say that the flavors were definitely very consistent throughout. It did evolve a little bit. One thing I would love to see is that finish kind of linger on a little bit longer. But for being 3 years old, very impressed here with what Taconic Distillery has put out, guys. So again, big thank you to the team over at Taconic Distillery for supplying with this bottle to review on the channel. Guys, if you're looking for more reviews like this, make sure you hit the subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You can also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. And until next time, guys, stay dusty.